Alright, what's up, guys? 5 more pages of Thy Autumn Dominion are up. I'm keeping the schedule going. Now, you wonder, Desmac and I, well, what influenced us to make Thy Autumn Dominion? There's both literary influences, as you can imagine, and comic influences, and a lot of crossover, but there's also an influence from something else. Right off the bat, Lone Wolf and Cub. I had gone over these a while back. I have these videos on my BitChute channel. Lone Wolf and Cub, the comic, just the black and white art, the dynamism, the dynamic art. Always a huge influence there. The masculinity, the fighting, the one against all, the concept of Thy Autumn Dominion pretty much is one human man who is the only masculine man in a world of just vicious enemies, and unfortunately the worst enemy to him are the women of his own group, but he doesn't stop fighting on. And Lone Wolf and Cub obviously embodies that. Ito Agami is literally, he's not by himself, he has his son Daigoro, but in a world, it's just, you're on your own. I know how that sounds, especially in the time we're in, the historical era that we're in. People, men like us, we're on our own. I know. Let's see. Berserk, yes. I had read a bunch of these a while ago. I bought this, the late Kentaro Mura, rest in peace. Berserk, just the art, obviously black and white, kind of a mixture of a Western style and manga style, extremely brutally violent, with a very masculine character who shows no mercy, but more often than not, he's not infallible, and he's not invincible either. That's what makes it so much more compelling. I never get in the comics, well, I get it, I get what they're doing, but in comics, particularly Japanese comics, that you don't see in American comics, your villains should be tougher, or at least very close to killing the heroes in your stories, because I mean, it makes the hero that much better when they have to struggle to get what they get. And this guy here struggles a lot. And I'm going to try to get more of these. I don't have a ton of space, though. As you'll see, I have enough books. But Berserk really is recommended, and unfortunately it will never be ended now. But this guy did so much, and rest in peace. Real quick, a little plug to my buddy, James LaFont. Particularly Taboo You. I remember when that book came out. I'm like, damn, man, James, you're a real dick, man. And the Well of Heroes, including the very rare Dark Art of an Aryan Mystic. A lot of good stuff in here. Also, James looking at a lot of literary stuff here, but also experiences from his own life in here. Always recommended. Guiding a lot of things in my writing. And, of course, Desmac's art. And going to, of course, the original guy himself. All the Robert E. Howard stuff. Look at all the stuff I have here. Most of these I got used. Trails in Darkness is horror stuff. Whoa, careful with this one, bro. And Almarek, I've gone over this. This is probably the biggest influence on this stuff. Howard's attempt to do Edgar Rice Burroughs' sci-fi fantasy. The most masculine story probably ever written. Some of the other stuff here. This is a good collection, actually. When the movie came out with Jason Momoa, I just include this. Why? I don't know. All his poems, or a lot, or some of his poems. I actually got this at the museum in Cross Plains, Texas. I'll never forget that trip, man. Let's see. Oh, this is Killraven. Killraven, The War of the Worlds. Now, looking through this is such an insane series. Unfortunately, there's also when I look at it, the subversion, the cuckery, despite what you see, is under the surface. I'll go over this at some other point, but still, concept-wise, Killraven overcomes the seeds of what we have now, but it's an influence on Thy Dominion, particularly Thy Dominion. It's technically not fantasy. It's technically post-apocalyptic. Shh, don't tell anybody. And just some more Howard stuff. Obviously, King, Conan, but very underrated. His Bran Mak Morn stories. I think this is a big part of it because Bran Mak Morn, picked leader, his people are close to being wiped out. They're on their last legs. Between the Roman invasions and the invasions of the other Celtic and Germanic tribes, the Anglo-Saxons, the Picts still stand strong. Bran Mak Morn, in a lot of ways, I mean, there's not a ton of stories with this character, but the ones that are there are really, really good in dealing with a race that is on the downswing. Okay? Let's see. Talk about apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic stuff. Jack London. Won't say too much. A lot of interesting post-apocalyptic stories and even prehistoric stories from one of the most masculine writers that ever existed, and a big influence on Mr. Howard. Jack London, particularly this one. You didn't think of him as a sci-fi writer. He wrote a lot of stuff. Between that and the Iron Heel, Jack London really requires a lot more appraisal in this day and age, but there's problems with that, as you can imagine. Mr. London was a proud... anyway, let me not get into that. I had mentioned Edgar Rice Burroughs, of course, the John Carter, the original 3 stories, still holds up. I mean, for something written in 1912, my grandfather was 2 years old. This stuff still holds up today. And of course, Tarzan of the Apes. Not what. Check these out. You think, oh, it's hokey, it's written back then. It's probably lame. These are some really brutal Darwinistic stories from Mr. Burroughs. All an influence on Desmac and my series, Thy Dominion. But there's one more influence before I go, and it's black metal. Now you think, well, what kind of influence does black metal have? I like to, when we're writing this stuff up and he's creating this stuff, Desmac, he likes the black metal too. Just the vicious rawness of it. Remember, black metal is kind of funny, right? It's metal, but it's always produced very cheap. Well, not cheaply. It's lo-fi. There's not a lot to it. Sometimes the bands are just 2 guys recording on very primitive equipment, breaking rules, like this band here. Yeah. Or, and also, I'll throw dungeon synth in there too. You get that atmosphere with this comic. Crazy music. The logo of Thy Dominion, which I'm still filling out, is influenced a lot by the black metal logos. The irony is that a lot of times you can't read the logos, but most of the bands I like from back in the day, you can read their logos. So, and of course, Bathory. I mean, listen, black metal, just the rawness of it. DeFago, damn, this album, bro. Unlike anything I've ever heard. But just, even this stuff too. Wolves in the Throne Room, very underrated. Well, I won't say underrated band. They're actually really good. They're not a hipster band. But, and of course, Borotsum. The whole idea of 1-man or 2-man, raw, right at you kind of, lo-fi work is very much in the vein of what we're trying to do with Thy Dominion. Okay, it's always going to be black and white, and there's other series we do that are in color, and we like color, right? But Thy Dominion is always going to be the black and blackest comic, in the vein, of course, of when I mean that, I mean the rawness of the blackest metal. So anyway, well, that's quite a collection there. But I thought I'd show you some influences on the Autumn Dominion. And the 5 pages are up, so check them out. Snowflake later.